How's it going, everybody? It's Pilot Flame, and we are back with another FPL video. And today we're going to be looking at Game Week 6 key fixture of the week in the Tactics Talk review between Chelsea and Manchester City. Chelsea had previously won 3 of 3 under Thomas Tuchel, but not this time. Pep Guardiola was able to get the victory over Thomas Tuchel in a narrow victory of 1-0. And this was away from the Etihad. This was at Chelsea's home ground, Stamford Bridge. So it's a very, very important win for City, as they will next play them. The reverse fixture will be at the Etihad, so you would think that would give an advantage later on in the title race when things are coming down to crunch time. So we're going to break down the lineups as well as the goal that was scored by Gabriel Jesus, and we'll kind of show the intricacies of how Pep Guardiola kind of changed his position in the game to allow himself to end up getting the victory over Thomas Tuchel, who also altered his formation slightly for this game from what we've seen traditionally. If you haven't done so already, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new or haven't done so already. It greatly helps out the channel, and turn those notification bells on so you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Drop us a follow over on Twitter so you can keep up to date with any and all FPL news, from injury news to price changes and anything in between. And lastly, make sure to give us a follow over on Twitch so you can see when we go live for our preview and deadline streams. There will be a pinned comment down below to let you know when those next streams are. We'll be doing a preview stream at the time of recording is tomorrow on Monday at 7 p.m. EDT over on Twitch. So make sure to check us out over there as well. So without further ado, let's talk about our partners for the FPL season with Fantasy Football Scout. So if you haven't heard about Fantasy Football Scout, they have a fantastic members area during the regular season. It's £25 for the membership, and that lasts the entire year. And during the off season, they give a 20% discount. But if you have missed that discount, fear not, you can still get the membership for £25, and it's fantastic. You can see the membership area just behind me. You have a bunch of different stats that you can use, powered by Opta stats, and create your own custom tables. You have the Rate My Team tool, you have the season ticker, player comparison tools, a whole array of things that you can use to help elevate your FPL game. So use the link down in the description below so that you can get access to these exclusive tools to help elevate your FPL game. Sign up now. So these are the lineups that Manchester City and Chelsea went with at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea being on the left and City being on the right. So what we can see here is pretty straightforward stuff from both teams. We've come accustomed to Pep Guardiola and Thomas Tuchel's systems. However, Tuchel kind of changed it up a little bit more on the defensive side, maybe because he knows that Pep is going to try to bulk out the midfield with the likes of Cancelo dropping in, Walker sometimes dropping in, maybe even Laporte pushing into the midfield as well, and can see constant rotation in there, and he wants a hold on that, which is probably why he went with the likes of Jorginho, Kovacic, and Conte, and just went with more of a 3-5-2 system rather than a 3-4-3. We saw this change last week as well when he took off Mount at halftime when things basically weren't going his way. He then chucked on Conte, got in control of the midfield, and then was up 2-0 within the first 15 minutes of the second half. I believe it was versus Aston Villa, and ultimately won 3-0. And Villa had their chances in that game, but I think also the two up front, Lukaku picks himself, but Timo Werner on the break just seems to be, quite good. Walker was going to have basically a one-to-one battle with him in most cases, but if Werner was ever left unattended, he could break him behind. And in the first 15 minutes, we saw the situation where Werner picked up this position, was able to cut it back to Lukaku, and Lukaku basically swung and missed at the chance. But had he connected, he was in around this position in the box, and maybe had it been on target with some decent force, it could have been a potential early goal for Chelsea. And they definitely had their moments. There was a couple of opportunities early on for Chelsea, some half chances, that being probably the best one with Lukaku and Werner, although Werner's touch was much to be desired as well in this one. But I still think his pace definitely brought a lot of threat, which City had to pay attention to, which is why Pep couldn't get away with just like playing Cancelo at right back and Zinchenko at left back. He definitely needed Walker to cover the likes of Lukaku and Werner, more specifically, from flying down the wings. With Chelsea's system, the change in midfield didn't alter the typical back five, as it were. In defense, Alonso playing at left wing back, Reece James playing at right wing back. Although when he was substituted, the system didn't really alter too much. Azpilicueta just came into this right wing back role, which he's familiar with, and the likes of Thiago Silva came in here as well, and then him and Christensen then swap places. So not really too much of a system change. Christensen is very comfortable playing right-sided center back, but often plays in the central role when Thiago Silva isn't on the pitch. But I think the potential breaking pace of Reece James definitely hindered Chelsea. I think they would have liked that. The chance creation would have came from getting the ball from the in midfield with Jorginho, Kovacic, Conte, keeping it, playing it to Reece James, or playing it through the lines to Werner or Lukaku to run in behind. I think that was mainly the strategy. Was it a bit too defensive from Tuchel? I mean, they didn't really create a clear-cut chance, in my opinion, and City had a few which could have potentially ended up in the back of the net, although the one that they did score probably would say is probably least likely that ended up in the back of the net. Later on, one of the midfielders was sacrificed as well, and Havertz came on. I can't remember exactly who it was. I want to say it was N'Golo Kante. And then the likes of Jorginho and Kovacic switched to more of a flat two. Werner came over to this right-hand side. Lukaku went centrally. Havertz went out on this left-hand side. And then Loftus-Cheek later on came on as well. And basically positioned himself kind of in behind this forward line, which was just kind of a last roll of the dice, maybe to get a set piece and get something, because there's a lot of height with Loftus-Cheek on the pitch. You have Loftus-Cheek, you have Lukaku. Havertz is deceptively tall as well. Alonso is very tall and good in the air. Antonio Rudiger is not bad in the air himself as well. So there definitely was some set piece threat there. Moving back to the original formation here, we're just going to alter things back. So Jorginho was here, Kante was here, Kovacic in the midfield three, Havertz was off the pitch, Azpilicueta was here, Thiago Silva was there, Christensen there, Azpilicueta there as well, and then Lukaku and Werner in the front two. And I think it was a decent enough game plan for Tuchel, but Pep came prepared. Pep definitely came prepared, and he basically set up in his false nine system. And I've kind of dropped Foden off the line to kind of just represent that. Initially, before the game, there was, on paper, it would seem like, oh yeah, Gabriel Jesus is going to play through the middle, and Foden was going to play out on the right, with Grealish on the left, De Bruyne on the right side of midfield, Bernardo on the left. But Pep went with something a bit different. He put Jesus out on the right. He had a natural right footer out on this right-hand side with Jesus, who's been playing there over Riyad Mahrez the last few games. De Bruyne and Bernardo actually swapped sides initially. So De Bruyne was actually on the left side of central midfield in the left half spaces, maybe because of the link-up with Grealish is a little bit better there. But I also think that when they get the ball, they're able to basically sweep passes a lot more effectively. So instead of, De Bruyne can use both feet, but it was much more effective to basically lift the ball and sweep it into spaces this way. Whereas if he was left-footed, he'd have to do it in a much more conservative way. Whereas this type of pass here is a bit more direct. And if he's on his right foot, he can basically play the ball a lot easier and away from the defender. So like if Lukaku's trying to come to this space, as an example, De Bruyne can basically bait him in potentially with the type of pass and use a bit more disguise on it. So it was a bit riskier on that front, but I think it worked out. Foden playing the false nine role, often switching places with De Bruyne at times, depending on the situation on the pitch as well. So you'd often see Foden as the left footer here if Pep wanted something a little bit more conservative passing wise out to this left hand side. Foden also with his left foot could sweep the ball up and over into Jesus onto this right hand side as well. But Foden through the middle played quite well. You would often see, Foden dropping in, Bernardo dropping in, Rodri dropping in, De Bruyne dropping in as well. And then you have Cancelo in here, Walker in here. And it's just a big, just blockade of just light blue shirts. And there's no real point where Werner or Lukaku aren't going to get, kind of harried the second they, try to, receive the ball. And I think that's what Tuchel tried with this midfield three, which worked effectively up until basically the goal. and they kind of contained it a little bit. It was more of the danger areas on these portions of the pitch where City were able to create chance after chance. Because if you isolate Azpilicueta 1v1 versus Grealish, which Grealish had a couple shots which missed the post narrowly wide as well, you could see situations where eventually one of those is going to go in. And then Rudiger versus Jesus, or Alonso versus Jesus, he was often getting to the byline in here and creating cutback opportunities as well for the likes of, Bernardo and De Bruyne making late runs, Foden kind of popping in and around the penalty spot. You saw that City's game plan was pretty straightforward from this point, especially because Tuchel went this more defensive, quote-unquote, style of play here. But often when City was in attack, you saw that the second they ever lost the ball, if it was with Rudiger, there were blue shirts all around the player with the ball. Everyone harried them. And this is something that Pep Guardiola's teams haven't done recently because of them getting burnt on the counterattack. But he relied on Laporte and the likes of Diaz to kind of control Werner and Lukaku. And they almost lost out to it in the opening 15 minutes with that chance that we mentioned by Lukaku. But Chelsea were very, very calm in the majority of situations when playing out from the back. But you could tell that they were still a bit kind of wary when, some of the passes were slightly rushed. But they were still in control for the most part. But City's press definitely affected them a little bit and probably made it so that they had a lot less possession than what Thomas Tuchel would have liked. He's definitely going to have less possession for sure. But I think that it's a situation where, City are going to have the majority of the ball. And when City were able to retain the ball back very quickly, typically within the first 5 seconds of losing it, they had the ball back almost immediately. And then they would have constant situations where you have Grealish out on this left-hand side, Cancelo dropping into this space, or even popping up on the right-hand side as well at times, often playing centrally. Rodri kind of holding down the fort, Bernardo and Foden kind of occupying the spaces in between the center backs. De Bruyne playing in this opposite half space. Jesus kind of hugging the line here with support by Walker. Diaz and Laporte pushed up very high up on the pitch as well. And basically, if they ever lost the ball, if it got to Jorginho or something like that, you can see the sheer volume of City players that could just collapse in here and retain the ball back in central areas and then in wider areas as well. Bernardo could rush across to Rudiger. Walker could come in because Walker also has the recovery pace to get back as well. And you could just see how effective that was or could be in just looking at it on paper as well. Another thing that I wanted to kind of mention was that the constant rotation of players caused Chelsea to have to kind of see whether or not they wanted to stay or they wanted to go. So I'll use the Aston Villa versus Man United game as an example. Aston Villa played a similar system. They played a back three as well. We often saw Ronaldo dropping off the line into this position, and the back three stayed in its position. Whereas Chelsea kind of had to, since there was a lot more members kind of fluctuating in and around what would be considered the danger zone in here, they had to kind of be like Christensen would have to say, okay, well, I got to pay attention to Foden. Well, that means Kovacic has to come back. That means Kante has to come back and potentially cover for Cancelo making that run. Azpilicueta's he's 1v1 versus Grealish, which isn't ideal. If Jesus is getting behind, does Alonso come back? That leaves kind of Walker in a free space to kind of link play with De Bruyne, and then Kovacic has to make a decision between these two in here. There were many different ways where City kind of pulled and pushed and, kind of dislocated and kind of spread out Chelsea's defense. But Chelsea were resolute and they held strong. There was a couple important blocks as well from the likes of Thiago Silva, a goal line clearance as well, where City could have also scored. I think it was Gabriel Jesus. He basically shot from around this position. And I think it was him and Christensen, Thiago Silva that is, were both on the line to end up stopping that one out as well. So a very, very intriguing game, very back and forward in the opening 15 minutes or so, and then City kind of took the chokehold, suffocated Chelsea, and then they really couldn't get anything going on the offensive end because I think Diaz and Laporte were excellent. I thought Cancelo was probably man of the match, ultimately getting somewhat of a fortunate assist, but he was fantastic as well. And I think just City's false nine formation finally got the best of Thomas Tuchel. Now let's take a look at the goal that was scored, the only goal in the game that was scored in the 53rd minute by Gabriel Jesus. Now the position basically stems from a corner. Now you can see there's a lot of dark blue in there, in and around the box. Now Reece James came off injured and is already off the sideline, which means Thiago Silva is now in there as well. So De Bruyne has a little short corner to Bernardo Silva. Pretty standard stuff from City. They had tried some initial stuff from the other side that was direct crosses into the box, which resulted in some, potential threat there. But they like to obviously play it on the ground. City aren't the tallest team in the world, and when you're not the tallest team in the world, you want to use the set pieces potentially for cutbacks or, mispositions. If De Bruyne, gets the ball and then receives it back in this position, then maybe he can look for, a situation where he's able to basically put the ball in this sort of area, and then maybe an angle opens up or a player is able to shoot under one of the Chelsea defenders' legs, and then you can create a situation there. But he plays it short to Bernardo, gets it out in this area here. Kante goes to follow Bernardo Silva. Alonso's coming out as well. Vern is keeping a close eye on Jack Grealish, who kind of goes into this situation on the corner of the 18 where he mostly played kind of his position, looking for, curved efforts and that sort of stuff. The ball's then played back in and then is shifted out to João Cancelo, who's on the edge of the box. Now Werner sees João Cancelo. Once the ball's played out here as well, all the City players kind of drop off a little bit. It's still kind of waiting for a cross kind of coming in, but the whole Chelsea line pushes up, which is what you should do. You got to make this, get a little bit more space and allow for yourself to basically, get out from this set piece sort of scenario. But what happens is Werner goes to commit. João Cancelo takes the ball towards more of the center area, goes for a shot, fakes it. Werner then commits a little bit, and then João Cancelo takes a shot on his left foot, which ends up ricocheting and then dropping to Gabriel Jesus. Now, it's basically just a scramble, more or less at this point, but Chelsea definitely have the numbers to defend this for sure. There shouldn't be a goal basically emanating from this. Somebody should be putting a tackle, getting low to the ground, because the only way the ball that can, it can get there, Jesus isn't going to be able to hit it up and over a Chelsea player and then in the top part of the net with close proximity of Chelsea players involved, unless there's some massive deflection that hits off, ricochets off the shoulder, has top spin and goes in the goal, in which case it might just go into Mendy's arms because it might not get as much power. So then Jesus gets it, he wriggles to one side, then comes back over to the other side near and around the penalty spot, and then fires a shot which then ricochets between a couple of Chelsea players and ends up bobbling into the back of the net. Now, this is going to be a poor goal for Thomas Tuchel's defense to concede. He would probably look back on that and be like, well, apart from that, we didn't really have any, worries. Yes, Grealish had a few pop shots and that sort of stuff. But I think with City, that sort of goal probably shouldn't transpire. Chelsea should definitely not concede that goal. But I still think you got to close the ball down effectively. And what I mean by that is the only way Gabriel Jesus scores there is if it goes between somebody's legs or deflects in between, off somebody's knee or leg, or it's going to be very low proximity to the ground. It's never going to be, it's going to hit off his shoulder and go in the goal, or hit off somebody's head and go in the goal. It'll probably get skied up, or it gets knocked out for the throw-in or a corner or something like that. It's always going to be low. So what you need to be doing is very defensive-minded, legs closed, or looking for more of the blocking position. You often see some players on a set piece, when they have the wall there, they'll be kneeling behind the wall and having one leg out. You kind of go to block it as if you're going to just use your turning your right or left leg and using it almost in a V type situation, so that you cover more surface area and make it so that the likelihood is it's not going to go through one of your legs or ricochet off the inside of your leg, and then basically what happened with Gabriel Jesus. But credits Gabriel Jesus as well. Cancelo a bit fortunate fantasy wise to get the assist, but I thought he was fantastic throughout the whole game, so that's kind of neither here nor there. But if you do have Cancelo, congrats on the points. But Jesus, again, he's a very tricky customer, kept the ball, close control. There was a lot of Chelsea players in and around him. And ultimately, he ends up firing a shot, which ends up bouncing between the two, and then fortunately finds the bottom corner. Mendy doesn't see it until it's basically the ball's here. So he's never going to save that. and he also has a lot of traffic in front of him. So I think it was somewhat of a fortuitous goal. But I think that, you know, the XG and the stats show that City ultimately would have scored anyway, I think, had Gabriel Jesus not scored in some way, shape, or form, whether it be Grealish in this position, you know, in open play, or a cutback of some kind, 1v1 versus Azpilicueta, who would have been tiring, constantly having to deal with Grealish. City would also bring on Riyad Mahrez, Fernandinho, and Sterling. So again, 3 very quality players coming on the pitch there as well, and it would definitely have caused very issuing concerns. You know, De Bruyne and Foden were the 2 that came off for Fernandinho and Sterling, but I still think you're in a situation where you still got some tricky customers to kind of deal with. So ultimately, I think the scoreline was probably what it deserved, a victory for City, a narrow victory at that. The goal, not the most glamorous, but hey, all of them that go in the back of the net count, assuming VAR doesn't rule them out. So yeah, that's going to do it for the Tactics Talk this week. Leave a comment down below as to what you thought was the exciting moment of this game, as well as leave a like and subscribe on the channel as well. We greatly appreciate that as well. Next week, I'm not sure what the highlight game of the week is going to be. I think maybe it's Liverpool versus Manchester City. Of course, they play back-to-back, very difficult games. A very tough week for City. You got Chelsea away, I think they have PSG away, and then they have Liverpool away, so not the greatest week for Man City, but if they come out with 3 wins out of 3, they could be doing quite well for themselves going forward. So yeah, that'll probably be the Tactics Talk for Game Week 7. And that's going to do it for our Game Week 6 edition of Tactics Talk between Chelsea and Manchester City. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new or haven't done so already. It greatly helps out the channel. And turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Also, drop us a follow over on Twitter so you can keep up to date with any animal FPL news, from injury news to price changes and anything in between. As well as give us a follow over on Twitch so you can join us live for our preview and deadline streams. There'll be a pinned comment down below on every video to let you know when the next FPL streams are for that. And lastly, use the link in the description to get your Fantasy Football Scout membership. There's access to Opta-driven stats tables, which are customizable, the Rate My Team tool, and much more. It's going to help elevate your FPL game. Thank you all for watching, and until the next one, take care.